Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are here once again in Jimmy's basement looking at the slot car track that we are all so familiar with. Today, we have a pretty special topic for you today, one that's pretty much essential to getting this track the way it is. It is the AC2Car system, the one that this track is famous for, if I might say. And it's basically the method that Jimmy uses to condense the track into a reasonable size without having it take up the whole darn basement. Besides that, it allows lane changes, which we did a video on earlier, and it also allows two cars to run in the same slot. So we're going to bring Jimmy in, and he's going to explain a little bit more about this transformer here.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Course,
I wanted to start by talking about the power supply.
Yes.
This is what I got in my hand right here is my Strombecker 12-volt power supply from when I was a kid. A lot of guys are familiar with these. It gives 12-volt DC, direct current.
Right.
Positive comes out of that screw, goes to the track, goes through the controller, the motor, and back to this negative. Makes the car run. This is a more powerful power supply that I was using before the AC2Car system. It's far more expensive. Today, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there because we use exclusively the Lionel toy train transformer you see right here.
Right.
It's a 100-watt transformer, and I can turn it off and bring it up. Halfway gives me 18 volts, and that's more than enough to run. See how much more power I can get?
Yeah, you can get quite a bit out of there.
So we leave it at about 18 volts. I'll explain to you why we use 16 to 18 volts instead of 12 as we go on.
All right, let's take a look.
If you guys remember, we had talked about we had talked about how the cars share power on the track.
Yeah, briefly we mentioned that.
If this is the A car and this is the B car, they share the same slot on the track. That's how we are able to get up to 8 cars running at a time on this track on a narrow width track. We'll talk about the slot configuration in just a bit, but I want to catch everybody up again on the fact that with alternating current, this copper tape and that copper tape get positive and negative switched, polarity switches 60 times a second. When positive power comes through to the A car, it's able to move forward, and the next 60th of a second, when the polarity is switched, he coasts, and car B gets his power to run from the controller. The third 60th of a second, he coasts, and A gets power again. Now, this happens so quickly that you hear the cars growl, and you get even more control than you would with regular DC.
Yeah.
So, as a refresher, did I cover everything?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's the gist of it.
All right. The reason we want 2 cars in the same slot is to double the number of cars we race.
Yes.
You cannot run 2 cars in the same slot unless you can have a lane changing system that gets the car out of the way and allows him to get to the other side of the track. So on the AC2Car system, you have a slot that has 2 ways to get around the track. One on the inside next to the yellow line, and one on the outside next to the white line. Now, it's confusing on my track, so I drew a diagram that we're going to go over.
Yeah, let's go take a look at it.
First, we should talk about the controller.
Yes, very important.
This
Get a
controller,
shot of that real quick.
what's different about the AC2Car system, it'd be a good idea to
definitely get a good shot of that.
Get a good shot. You can go to ac2car.org to my website and see more on this information.
Yeah, you can see these diagrams.
But note here that in line with the controllers on this diagram are 2 diodes. I'll show you what that symbol means later. they stop power from going to the A controller when the B controller needs it, and going from the B controller when the A controller needs it. They're very simple, and with the AC2Car system, we disconnect the red brake line. So all you use is the black line and the white line. This is the AC train transformer that we use, the Lionel train transformer that does alternating current. The controller itself is the same as everybody else's, except once it gets past these clips, there's a diode inside the line, just like that shows. Now, let me go over to the workbench so I can show you. Oh, did you have
Before you do that, just one thing I wanted people to know. So the diode, as you mentioned, is underneath this brick here.
Yes.
It makes it easier to replace if necessary, but you mentioned earlier you've never had to replace the diode.
I've never had a diode burn out. You know, we were experimenting with this, and no diodes have burned out. We've had one or two diodes get overheated when the guys go to solder them in their car.
Right.
And you put them on the track and they're not working right. And then we realize he's just overheated the diode.
Yeah.
But in terms of the diode burning out or motors burning out, we've had no problem whatsoever.
Perfect. Well, let's head over to the workbench, take a look at one of the cars. Here, I'm going to head this way.
Yeah, let's switch around.
Yeah.
I took the liberty of drawing this on some scrap paper I had.
Very nice.
I want you to see first, I got to get my ruler here, and I want you to know that these are the widest cars that run on my track. They're the widest cars that ever raced. IMSA and FIA gave a width, the widest width that can go on the track. The reason they had to restrict the width is because the wider you make a car, the shorter you make a car, and the lower you make a car, the faster it goes. That goes for slot cars too. That goes for slot cars too. And I got to tell you, my track was designed 30 years ago for scale cars.
Yeah.
And because these are to scale, this is the widest car that goes on my track. Today, there are manufacturers, I won't need to name them, who make cars lower, wider, and shorter than stock. And that's what started the undoing of slot cars in the 70s, because guys wanted to go faster and faster. Now, these cars that I'm talking about look good, but they're wider and lower and shorter than they should be.
Yeah.
And that poses a problem for me.
Yeah.
Because when a manufacturer creates a car that's wider than the original, they come together.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to show you that this diagram right here represents two slots together, lane 1 and lane 2.
Right.
And then that lane 1 and lane 2 have a second way around the track on this side.
Right.
On the left is a yellow line, on the right is a white line, just like on the highway.
Yes.
So this car can fit into that slot, and a B car can run right behind it in the same slot. The problem is, how does this white 51 pass 6? There has to be a lane change system where the car comes, hits a lane changer, and is taken to its slot on the opposite side.
Yes.
Can you see that, Ryan?
Yeah, I can see that.
And then the same thing goes for the second set of cars in lane 2. If this guy is in lane 2 and he's blocking the Sunoco car,
Right.
the Sunoco car can pick up his switch and get to this side, and now he can get by each other.
Perfect.
So the question is, how far apart do we got to make these guys? If I turn this over and I turn this over and I measure, and they have 1/8 of an inch clearance, we get 2 3/4. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
So here in this diagram, we see that with the AC2Car system, you have 2 slots 3/4 of an inch apart, 1 3/4 from the edge.
Right.
And of course, on turns, that has to grow because the cars can fishtail. 2 3/4 allows these cars to pass each other, like that.
Right.
another 3/4 of an inch, and then another 1 3/4 takes us to the opposite edge of the track. That means we can now run with AC2Car 4 cars without digital. Anybody can bring any kind of car, and we put a diode in the car. We can run 4 cars on a 7 3/4 inch wide track. If you look at this diagram, on a 9 1/4 inch track, we can run 6 cars.
Well, you look at that, yeah.
Now, I calculated earlier before you came here that 6 cars on a regular track would be 17 1/4 inches wide. That would be, this is, what is this here? 10, you have to back up there. 10, and that would be right there, 17, to this edge of the table. So it's much, hold your hands right there, Ryan. From there to here, put your hand here.
I'll do it.
And then here we go.
That's the width right there of a,
Go ahead.
that's the width right there of a standard track racing 6 cars. We can race 6 cars on a track this wide.
Yeah.
And like you had alluded to earlier, Ryan, it's easier, you get more racing taking 9 1/4 inch path all around the basement or all around your garage or all around your rec room than you would with 17 inches. So you get more racing in a given space.
Yeah, it makes it able to be scaled as well. If you had a track that big, it'd be a whole different ball game. You know?
But I wanted to illustrate the lane changing, why that has to happen. Because 2 cars are following each other, whether they're sharing a lane or not, they have to get by from one side to the other. Now with the AC2Car system, instead of having this lane changer out in no man's land and having more than one, where cars shunt each other and bash each other off, the AC2Car system calls for a track. Let me have that, Ryan. A track right there. I'm going to hold that down there. Could you hold that down?
Yep, I got it.
A track with lane changers, but it has a chicane for cars to come together. In my case, it was a hairpin turn.
Yeah, so tell me what a chicane is real quick.
A chicane, in racing like at Goodwood, the straightaway is so long, the modern cars go so fast they want to slow them down. So they'll build a wall right in the straightaway and force the cars to come around the wall. So everybody's got to hit the brakes and come around. So if we took our 4 slots that we talked about earlier and brought them together for this chicane, now the cars can't pass without hitting each other, and they queue up into a line, as they, just like real racing,
just like in real life.
As they go through that chicane at Woodwood, they don't go 2 abreast; they go 1 at a time. But what this does now, it sets you up for you ready for your lane changer, without cutting other guys off.
Makes a lot of sense there.
It does. Now, the other thing it does is further up, all the cars funnel together so that if you do nothing, if you don't hit the lane changer, they all continue through on the same side of the road. If you do nothing, if you don't push the button for your lane changer, they'll continue on this side of the road. If you hold it down, they'll go to that side. So once a car is in the passing lane, if they don't do anything, it will funnel back to the regular lane.
It was very useful, though. This is it's a great diagram, and it really demonstrates how you can make a reasonably sized track and get a lot of racing in.
We talked about the diode in the controller. I'm going to show you the diode in the car. This, guys, is a diode. Can you get that?
Can you get that?
Notice that there's a gray band on this. This is an electrical one-way valve. Think of it as a one-way valve. There's a gray band on it. Power can come through this way, but think of it this way. When it hits the gray band on the one side, it can't get through. So on our diagram, this is the guide flag. This is the tape on the track. This side is always positive on regular racing. It comes through here, goes through the diode because the gray band is on the opposite side, through the motor, hits ground, the motor runs, the car moves forward. If you flip this diode around, the car will not get its power, and it'll just coast. So what happens here is on an A car, note this is an A car, power comes through, makes the car run for 1/60th of a second. The next 60th of a second, power comes in this way because it switches polarity.
Yeah.
Goes through the motor, but is stopped by the diode. So all that motor does is coast for 1/60th of a second. Then the B car at the same time gets its power, and the car is able to run.
Right.
It's a difficult thing to explain.
No, I think
That's pretty simple.
it's pretty simple once we get down to it.
The reason we need to go with 16 to 18 volts instead of 12 volts
Yes.
is because the car is coasting for half the time. So it needs a little bit more power to reach the same speed as what we're used to using 12 volts DC.
Yes.
Is that
Yes,
understandable?
that makes sense. You need a
Okay, good.
little bit extra juice.
Good, good. So with that, Ryan,
Let's take a look at maybe the car
The
there.
car?
So let's get a practical example.
okay, what we have here is just like this flag, this guide flag.
Yeah.
You can see the guide flag. Let me move that over the white paper. It might be better
That might
for
be
you.
a better contrast.
You can see power comes up to the car, and before it gets to the motor, we've soldered in a diode in the
Right.
same way that this diagram shows.
Note the gray band.
The gray
right there.
band is on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Now this is an A car. This car can run on anybody's track anywhere, and it'll be fine on
Yeah.
regular tracks. It'll be fine.
Right.
If you disconnect these guys and switch them right here, you've created a B car. The B car will run on an AC2 car track, but it will not be able to run on a regular track.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So if you wanted to have an AC2 car like my friends do, they'll usually change their cars to an A car.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
So just by simply adding a diode in this fashion and switching these two, you're able to make an A car to a B car.
Simple as that. You know,
It
you
is,
bring
it
you bring
is.
a car in, put a diode, and boom.
I have a question. I've seen some of your cars with both A and B.
Okay, hold on, I'll show you why. And that is because they are Carrera cars.
Ah.
Can you repeat that? It might be too fast.
That's because they're Carrera cars. Carrera thought ahead. This is a Carrera model. They're very good models. They run very good on my track. They have a switch in there built in to change polarity.
Built in. Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
The reason for that is some people miswire their racetracks, and they put the positive where the negative and negative where the positive is supposed to go.
Yeah.
Then they rewire their cars to run the right direction. And if you go to their house, at least this way you can switch polarity and run at their house. But for our purposes, with one flick of a switch, we can make this car run as a B car or run as an A car.
Very nice.
That's a good question, Gus. Very good
very
question. Again, unlike digital, where Carrera Digital has to have Carrera Digital cars, and Ninco Digital has to have Ninco Digital cars,
Right.
and Scalextric Digital has to have Scalextric cars. With the AC2 car system, even though we only run 2 cars in one slot instead of 5 or 6 or 7, we can take any car and make it run AC2 car on the track
Yes.
just by adding the 7 to 17 cents. It depends how many we buy. They're all free when you come to my house.
Right.
And all you got to do is solder them into the car.
It's makes the system a lot more adaptable.
It
Let's
is,
be
it
real,
is,
you
it
know?
is. Anybody can bring any car they want and they can race here.
That's awesome.
And we have a good time doing that.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to show us about this?
I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, I think we have.
We've covered it all, and guys can write in with questions.
Yeah, please do.
A lot of questions can be answered by going to www.ac2car.org.
Yeah, be sure to visit that if you want to see that diagram we saw earlier or any other tips and tricks about AC2 car systems. But other than that, please, once again, feel free to write in if you guys have any requests for topics to cover. If you like the video, drop a like for us, and, of course, a subscribe. We could always use a boost in numbers. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video today, and we'll see you on the next one. Signing off.